Okay, this is January 3rd, 2018. Have to get used to saying that. 2018 meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board will come to order. I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. First order of business is the approval of the agenda, and I'd like to make a suggestion for just changing the order somewhat. Since we have a number of people here to talk about the schedule, if we would make that the first discussion item, and then the public hearing, and I think Andy's here to answer any questions about the football agreements, that could be the second discussion item, and then go in the order that they have it here. Is that agreeable to people? Okay, could I have a motion I'll move to approve the agenda with those two changes. All those second by Brian. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, the agenda is approved. You have public comment? None? Approval of the minutes. Denise, you had some changes, right?
Yeah, well, I'll make a motion to approve the December 20th regular meeting minutes.
Moved by Denise, second by Brian. Any of you guys?
Yeah, mine is a very, very simple change on page 3 under my comment. It just said commended the music performance last evening. It was actually the music performances, because I also saw the Mohammed one, which was awesome, and later saw the middle school one. So I just would like to change that to the various music performances and say they were very well done.
And I had a change that I think since Kenny Rotner has recused himself from football, I don't think he voted on that motion. I think the minutes should read that Kenny left the I don't know how should I say that, left the meeting.
Or just say got up and recused himself from
Recused himself from the discussion.
Recused himself from the discussion at the beginning of the football, then re-entered at the end, and that the vote should be 4-2-0, because I don't think you voted at all in that. So I think that more accurately reflects what happened. So with those two other changes,
I have one. Minor one, second paragraph, page 11. Dan Klein mentioned that in a forum where it says there would be requests for input from physicians and scientists, I think it should say there may be requests for expert presentations and asked how those would be handled.
okay. Okay. So with those changes, any others? With those changes, all in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, motion passes. There were no non-public minutes. We didn't go into non-public, right? Okay. Announcements, comments, accommodations from the district? No? From the board? Brian?
I just read today about SB 193 passing the House. Is that something that's going to affect us in any way in the future that we should have a discussion on? Or?
Yeah, as SB 193 for the rest of the board is a legislation that proposes to divert public funds to private use, either divert from public use to private use. I'll leave it there. It is something that has significant impact. Whether it has a significant impact on Oyster River really would be unknown, but across the state, it will definitely have a significant impact. We don't lose a lot of kids, but other systems do lose a lot of kids. And so money following children that are not public school children will have a detrimental effect on school systems across the state of New Hampshire.
I did read that one of the qualifications in order to do that is that you have to be in an underperforming school district. Obviously, I don't perceive us to be an underperforming school district, so I don't know if that exempts us or no.
No, there aren't any exemptions as the law is currently configured. There are a lot of attempts to amend SB 193, and most of them deal with potential conflict between public funds being used for private purposes. I just saw a pretty lengthy critique in relation to the special ed law, and there's lots of inconsistencies with SB 193 and federal and state requirements that are currently in place. So it's a very complicated proposal that is absolutely detrimental to public education.
Is it something that when you go up to your...
Yeah, I'm sure that will be,
I know
and
it's gonna be a hot topic.
I think they've taken a position on that before.
They have.
And obviously opposed to that, so, but I'm sure that will be coming up, and I'll report on that.
Is it something eventually we need to talk to our local legislators in Concord to...
We have been. Our local legislators are as concerned as we are. So it's a law that has a lot of legs in Concord right now, being driven by the majority party.
And almost surely will be tested in court.
Almost surely.
I know there is some constitutional issues.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But a related thing, and to say what's happened in the past, it's not going to predict the future because now the dollar figure is taken away from being in play. But the recent tax law passed at the federal level, where people used to be able to put in money for 529s for college education, that has now been extended. People can use that for high school education as well. So it's another chip away at public education, both at our state level and at the federal level. And we will feel effects from that, I believe.
Other comments? Hearing none? Okay. District reports, is there a report from the Assistant Superintendent?
Actually, I wanted to say a quick thing about the SB 193. The other thing that might protect our district from the impact of it is that one of the current components of it is you have to have a family income 300% of the poverty limit. So it's actually geared the benefits towards the lower end of the economic scale, and certainly our community is on average higher than that in terms of income. So that's one provision that's currently in there that probably would rule out many people in our community from being able to access and take advantage of the benefits of that. But I agree with Dr. Morse, statewide it will have an impact on the amount of money going into public education. Changing the subject, with tomorrow's snow day, I have no doubt that you will be starting to get a few emails here and there from community members concerned about the calendar. And I just wanted to take a quick minute, and I'll give you a memo that'll give you all the facts and figures on this for the next meeting, but I did want to take a minute to just remind you how our calendar is structured. We build our calendar around hours, and we do 178 days, and at 6 hours a day, that's 1,068 hours. State minimum requirement for a school calendar is 990 hours, so we start 78 hours above state minimum requirement. The other minimum standard is you have to build into your calendar at least 30 hours or 5 days of snow days to make up time, which we have done, and as of now, we will have used 4 of them. So bottom line is you need to, in the end, all students to high school and middle school have to have 990 hours of instructional time. At the elementary grade, that's 945 hours. In the past, we haven't fully utilized the benefits of the hour calculation, so I would encourage us to take some time at a future board meeting to discuss that, because in the end, the state is holding us to the minimum standard of 990 hours. And we start well ahead of that. So there's room for us to have some conversation of how we would like to go about managing that.
And just before you leave that too,
Yep.
Todd, just to remind the board, when we talked about this before Christmas, we do still have 2 professional development days built into the spring calendar. So if we wanted to turn those into student days, we could do that.
Yes, I saw. So bottom line, we have five snow days built in, plus those 2 teacher professional days. I'm very confident under meeting minimum standard, we'll easily be able to meet minimum standard and have school end on that, around that June 21st, that fifth snow day, it's really on the board to decide how they want to manage that.
So even though we have 178 days, we could have fewer than 178 days and
Correct.
still meet the hourly requirement.
Correct. And that's a decision you can make later in the game when you take a look at the situation. In the past, the state has required waivers and things of that sort, but the hour calculation, as long as you're meeting that minimum standard and you construct your calendar to meet those minimum standards, which we have done, local boards can then take a look at that and make what's the best decision. So I am very confident that that June 21st, as the fifth snow day, regardless, we can conceivably end on that date.
But early release or late starts count against the
Correct.
hour total?
Correct. So you start with our 1,068 hours. We have had 4 snow days so far. You subtract, that's 24 hours. Then you subtract the 3 hours for the early release. We're now down to 1,041 hours. We're still above the minimum standard. Again, I'm not here to advocate for only doing the minimum, but I'm simply telling you, you have more flexibility than we used to have under the 180-day calendar, because I still think most of the emails we get from community members is on that one-for-one, we lost a day, make up a day, 180 days, that kind of thing, and we're on hours now, and so we can leverage that differently than we have in the
I would
past.
say that the community is wedded to that idea because that historically is how the district has operated.
Yes.
But about 5 years ago, we made the switch consciously to go to hours, and it's complicated enough so it's not part of the ecosystem of how people think. And so I've asked Todd to capture this presentation tonight in a memo to send out to parents so they have a better understanding of the calendar. And we'll do that, probably not tomorrow, but probably on Friday or one day.
Yeah, the memo's already drafted, I just didn't want to send it out until I've had a chance to just mention to you guys basically how the system works. So ultimately, you as a board do have the authority to determine what that final day will be.
And if we ended
within
up
the
in an
minimum.
extreme situation, that would mean the entire state has ended up in an extreme situation. You have control here at the board level with that extra 78 hours. And then if we ended up with a totally crazy winter, and it was one that impacted the entire state, then you can always ask for waivers from the state if we needed to. But I would want to say that Hannah was quite concerned about senior graduation, and she volunteered that the seniors could graduate on July 4th to help all the rest of the students in the district.
Yeah, so she's making a lot of friends in the senior class. That's good.
She was really saying, it's not going to change, is it? No, it's not going to change.
And Suzanne and I were actually discussing graduation in all seriousness. You may recall a few years back, you as a board made the decision that we would hold off until March to finalize everything. And obviously Suzanne will be coming to you with a recommendation for when graduation should be when that time comes. And I would remind you that one of the variables that we struggle with is we now use an off-site venue. So to some extent, we have to lock and load on that date earlier rather than later, and it also depends on what other schools are doing. So please know that that's something we're trying to juggle as well. Any other thoughts on calendar?
Just one
Yep.
follow-up, unless you're going to get to it, maybe. We talked in the fall about revisiting our conversation around blizzard bags. That's one of the...
This is why we're
And
bringing
I
it up
think-
tonight.
Well, I
Dan.
think this goes a long way towards addressing that, but I think there's probably still a need to address that concept, and then maybe for the board to take a position
Yes.
in some way.
So I also asked Todd to be ready on the 17th, just to do a more enhanced version of this presentation and to address the blizzard bag issue, Dan, because we really need to take that off the table so that people don't get confused.
Okay.
And lastly, moving away from calendar, I did, obviously, Dr. Morse was named New Hampshire Superintendent of the Year last month, and Mr. Newkirk and I have been working to determine a date that we could have a community reception to honor him. So please put on your calendar January 25th at 4 o'clock in the Oyster River High School multipurpose room. And I wish Dean, Dean is here, good, there will be cake. He was concerned about...
As long as he brings it.
He was concerned about the decided absence of cake at our last meeting, and there will be cake. I just want to make that clear. Courtesy of Doris Demers. So, yes, and I will send out an invitation through School Messenger that will have all that information, but January 25th, 4 o'clock in the high school multipurpose room. All are invited to just honor Dr. Morse and have some cake. So, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Todd.
Superintendent's report?
Several dates that I want to share with the board this evening. The first one is we had tentatively scheduled January 31st as a possible workshop date for the board, and we're not going to need it as a workshop. However, I would love to be able to keep it so that we can do our first strategic planning focus group with the board and elected officials. So I would like to send out an invitation to the entire council, the entire select boards of Madbury and Lee, and get as many of the elected people in one room so that they can act as an elected official focus group as we start to build the data for the next strategic plan. And I'd like to do that on January 31st, and then we'll see how many people we can get from the towns. Everybody's really busy, so I don't know how receptive the council or the select boards would be in sending more than a representative, but I'll ask to send as many as they possibly can, and we may end up with Jay and Scott, who typically represent their bodies, but maybe we can get a little bit more depth if we invite them all.
Is that going to be at 7 o'clock? Or is
Yes, yeah, 7 o'clock. And that will be done by Jack Sullivan from NASDAQ. So keep that date. And then the leadership team yesterday met with Andrew Smith, and we have some dates for additional diversity training. As we've shared with the board in the past, the number one issue from the staff after having been oriented to diversity issues by Andrew was, what's the next step? And what they wanted to know is how to speak about race. So Andrew has been scheduled to speak to the Mohammed staff on January 9th at 7:45 a.m., to speak to the Massway staff on January 17th at 7:45 a.m., to speak to the high school staff on January 31st at 7:15 a.m., and the middle school at 3:15 p.m. In addition, we're in the process of setting up 2 parent forums. The first one would be to provide the parents who would like to come the same orientation that Andrew gave the entire faculty. And then the second one would be to address for the parents how to deal with the issue of race when their children raise it as a question in the home. So those will be in February. Those dates aren't locked in yet. So those are firm dates that we have. Andrew coming back to speak to our staff.
Just a question about the staff. Would that be something that board members would be able to
Absolutely. If you want to be part of that conversation, you're more than welcome.
or just to be,
Yep.
to listen in on
Yep.
what?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's it for my report this evening, other than say Happy New Year to everyone.
Just a question. So was the January 31st, was that to talk about homework? Was that what originally was set out to be?
Right. We were going to talk about homework, but we're doing the master schedule tonight, and homework is part of the regular schedule on the 17th.
Okay,
So
but the 17th, you all have your football discussion.
Right.
Is that going to, and then there'll be other things too, is that really enough focus for homework? I anticipate the football is going to be a lot of public comments and a long meeting, and so I think it's different than we originally crafted.
You may be right.
And those are,
I'm still of the opinion that the one way to do it is to have a workshop that's just set up for homework. I think we've tried this 2 or 3 times, and it's
that's why I raised
encroach.
the issue.
Yeah.
So do you want to keep the 31st on homework only?
No,
Keep this?
No.
we
but-
could change it. I
think-
think it's important to get the strategic plan
I
off the
think-
ground.
I think if we could look for a date in February.
Look for additional
But
dates.
have it just be on that topic, because
Okay.
I think we just haven't had luck with doing it in a meeting. I hate to do another session, but I just think that it's not going to get done.
Okay, will do. So we'll keep
That's-
31st for
that's to-
strategic plan.
That's why I raised it. I was worried that we weren't going to
Yeah.
be able to pay enough attention to
Yeah.
an issue that really affects everyone as opposed to football that is affecting a precious few.
Okay.
Business Administrator? No? Yeah, we have some things coming up later. Student Senate report?
So I apologize for not being here last meeting. I had the flu, and even though the holidays are about sharing, I decided to keep that one to myself.
Hannah, could I interrupt just one second? Were you informed of all the committees that you were appointed to at the last meeting and the responsibilities?
Oh, geez. So as Dr. Morris said, students are a little worried about when school will end, but I'll make sure to let them know about the hours instead of the days and all of that stuff. But all the U.S. history students are pretty relieved because National History Day is on Friday, and we're all rushing to try to finish up our projects in time. National History Day is a nationwide contest, and students have been working really hard for U.S. history classes to make a project that fits with the theme of conflict and compromise. So I'm a part of a U.S. history class that's taking part in it, and it's very exciting, very stressful, lots of work, but it's a lot of fun, and all students have learned a lot from doing research on a topic. So finals week is rapidly approaching, and student stress levels are beginning to rise. But at the end of the week on Friday the 19th from 7 to 10, in the multipurpose room is the Snowball semi-formal dance. It is hosted by all 4 grades in Real Life for Life, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The student governments have been working really hard to plan it and make it a really exciting dance to kind of let freshmen and sophomores who don't get to go to prom have kind of a time where you can have a dance in high school. The senior senator, Emily Allison, created the school's first cultural bulletin. It kind of has a lot of fun facts, stuff that's happening through the month of January, and Mr. Milliken posted it on the Facebook page this afternoon, and it's been sent out to staff, so I know a lot of students looked at it during advisory today. So if you look on the Facebook page, you can find it there, and it's a really great bulletin. It offers a lot of great information. Over the holiday break, the boys basketball team had a tournament, and they lost in the 3rd place game by they lost by 5, but they played really strong. And the boys hockey team was a runner-up in their holiday tournament as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving to the discussion items. We moved the master high school schedule to the top, so take it away.
So before we talk about the master schedule, and I turn it over to Mark and Mr. Kelly, I would like to bring your attention to a memo that is in your packet, and it's in regards to NEASC. As you know, we went through the NEASC accreditation process last year. The visit was last year. The self-study took place over a series of years prior to the visit. And we're happy to say that we are reaccredited. We're very excited about the report. There were a lot of commendations and notable items that they discussed in the letter, and some of those items are in the memo. Also, they have recommendations that have been made in the report, and there are some recommendations that I also included in the memo that I've highlighted for you. The report the total report, if you would like to read it, I can send it to you. I do have that digitally, so I'm more than happy to send that off to you if you'd like to see the report. But that's just a brief summary, and at a later date, we may have some time to talk a little bit more thoroughly about the points, about the self-study. I have to say that going through the self-study it's a wonderful opportunity to really reflect on your practices, on your school, and it helps just the self-study alone, it helps us to reflect on our growth and where we need to go and what we're doing well. And so a lot of the things that were noted in the self-study, the accreditation team that visited noted those same things. And we're working on many of the things already. We were already working on many of the recommendations.
So I'm going to ask the board how many would like to see the entire report so that there's a surprise.
Yeah.
Just 1, 2, 3, all of you? Brian?
Okay.
Al?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, 6 out of 7. Send it all to them, and Al can look at it when he wants.
If he wants to or not.
Yeah,
would-
okay, we'll send
I
it
would
digitally.
Scan it, I would probably wouldn't.
So Mr. Kelly and Mr. Milliken are here, and they're going to come in, they're going to, sorry, they're going to come up. The scheduling team worked exhaustively, I have to say, all last year and this year at the master schedule. They had, the process that was used was very deliberate, it was very extensive, and they're here to talk to you a little bit about the process and also to talk to you about the new master schedule, which is also included in the information that you have. But they're going to be putting it up on the screen as well.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am Tom Hausman, and I'm a Spanish teacher at the high school, and I'm part of the committee that decided on the new schedule. And when we presented this to the full faculty, I told everybody, in my house, when we think about going on vacation, basically the same thing happens. One person says, I don't care where we go. Somebody else says, I'd like to go to safari in Africa. There's another vote for going to the Pyrenees and making sheep cheese. And the last vote is for going to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And nobody ever gets what they want. So doing a schedule is a very similar process. It is exhausting, it's hard, and no matter what we do, there are going to be people that are happy and people that are unhappy. So going into that, we knew that that was going to be the end result. And I can say that from my own perspective in the world language department, everybody was given 2 choices. And in the world language department, we could not pick a schedule that we liked most as a group. And I think that this really speaks to the fact that both the schedules we picked could be equally satisfying or dissatisfying for any group of teachers. So I think that, after the 9 months we spent working together, that we came up with 2 really good options, and I think in the end, we picked an option that we can all live with. So we'll give you a little more details on that and share with everybody the whole process that we went through. Thank you.
I'm Mark Milliken, the Dean of Faculty, and the important part of Tom's story is you still get to go on vacation, right? So even though you may not agree where to go, everybody gets to go on vacation. Part of the complexity of a schedule, the reason it's complex is there are so many varied interests involved. So what we tried to do right away, first off, was we had a discussion, how can we align our master schedule with what we value in our mission statement. That's how we started. And we delineated what is it we value about teaching, what is it that we value about learning, and how can we create a schedule to complement that. So we talked about personalized learning, we talked about social emotional health of both students and adults. We kept going back to a safe, nurturing environment, and how do we create a schedule. So anytime a schedule proposal would come up or we would see a school that had a schedule, we went back to that as our touchstone. What is it that we value? What is it that we're trying to create here? And that helped us stay, what I feel is stay centered. The journey officially began a year ago. And we visited Bedford, Gorham High School in Maine, Portsmouth, Sanborn, and Sauhegan. Those were schools that varying members of the committee visited. We did a ton of research on other schools based on websites. We looked at a lot of articles about how best to combine what we know about learning with how we spend our time. It was interesting to find that this high school schedule has been an issue way back to the 60s as far as the factory model 7-period day, and how does that mesh with what we know about how adults and kids learn. Enriching students, one of our meetings, there's a freshman project that you're aware of, Power of One. and there was two students who decided their Power of One project was scheduling. So they presented their proposal to us, to our committee. Very insightful, very interesting. Enriching Students is a scheduling software program, which I will mention a lot more later. But that was a key piece of our decision-making process. And the committee members, the leadership team, and other staff members attended webinars, conferences, as well as had webinars. The staff was surveyed for, after we decided what it is we value, we tried to create questions around eliciting, based on what we value and what we know about teaching and learning, what are some schedule preferences that you have. Students were surveyed, and it was very impressive. Out of 790-something students, 555 kids took time to respond to our survey. The very last question on the survey was an open-ended, just give us one suggestion if you could make one change about the schedule. Over 500 kids took time individually to write to us about the schedule. So very impressive student input. We had brown bag lunches for students and staff a number of times afterward. We continued to say to everyone, we want to know what you feel works about this, we want to know what you see as problems, and we want to help you all address the problems that you see might arise with this schedule. We presented the schedule to the Student Senate, and the other thing that we did was we met with the Special Education Department, because as you'll see in the schedule, it isn't your traditional schedule with a Monday through Friday schedule. With special education, special services, that presents unique issues for scheduling out long-term. So we had a working session with them to discuss maybe what those problems could be. Our committee members, we had committee members from every department. So in addition to Sean Kelly and Tom Hausman here, Gab Anderson from Social Studies, Lisa Hallback from Math, Heather McAnuff, our Director of Counseling, was involved, John Moran, Exercise Physiology and Health Department, SD Ott from Special Ed, Sean Peschel, our new Extended Learning Coordinator, Kathy Stetson, Business and Computer, and James Tebow from Science. One of the things that you'll notice, we noticed, as Tom referred to, math and science have different issues around time and frequency than do, in general, social studies and English. And that's something that we battled with and struggled with, and hopefully came up with a compromise.
I'm Sean Kelly, as was listed on the committee, and as Mark was just saying, it was a struggle at times to figure out how to have one schedule that allows for the different content areas to do the best with what works in their content area. I would say, though, the most important thing that we kept going back to was our mission statement, and then the feedback we got from students, both through the survey, which we have a couple of the slides highlighted, and then also from our discussions with students. And I would say that probably the biggest thing that we were trying to take this opportunity to address was student stress, homework, and time to go deeper with their learning. This slide talks about what students see as the top 3 items that contribute to their stress level. And you can obviously see that homework stands out as number 1. And then course load was another thing that we were trying to balance, because we realized that if you reduce the number of basically slots when students can take a class, we lose some of the freedom of the elective system, which we see as a strength of our school. At the same time, if you're taking 7 classes in a day, you're just going to be wiped out, and the level of learning you can achieve in that day is pretty limited, which you could probably ask most students at the end of any regular day. So this was again, there were multiple questions to the survey. This is one that really stood out to us that we kept touching back on. This was another piece that we wanted to make sure we were able to address, which has to do with students connecting with teachers throughout the day. And this actually, I don't think we included it in the slide, but in the poll to teachers, this stood out as something very important too, was an ability, a chance to check in with students and do additional instructing throughout any day that they need to. And then this was from the teacher survey. So this was a separate issue. Obviously, students come first, but being able to have important discussions about pedagogy is going to help us better teach students. So one of the things that teachers brought up as the schedule presenting an opportunity for is more time for teacher collaboration to discuss what we're doing, to discuss our students. So as much as it was a daunting process, it was actually an amazing opportunity, not only to go back to our values as a district, but also to realize that whatever we set up can make these issues something that we can better address. It's certainly not the solution. We're hoping that by doing this, we'll better allow, we'll create the more fertile soil that will allow for what these problems are to be addressed. But we were very excited about being able to come up with something that we felt touched on each of these issues. I think you have this in front of you, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably be a little hard to see here. So as Mark mentioned, it's a little different because it is a rotating 3-day schedule. So the first day is Bobcat Day, and then there's Blue and White Day. I'll try to keep this fairly concise. The notable things would be not only that it's a 3-day rotating schedule, but that the Blue and White days no longer have all classes meeting in a day. And that we felt would be a major improvement when it comes to both depth of learning, but also student stress. Because if you're scheduling 7 classes and you're going through all 7 in one day, you're swamped. Not only at the end of the day, but then you're going home, and if you got an assignment in every single one of those classes, they're all due the next day. So this, hopefully, like I said, it's not necessarily the solution in and of itself, but this will hopefully facilitate a way that students can better pace out their learning and also their work outside of school. The other notable thing, which Mark will get back to later, and I believe there's a separate slide for it, is that there is a flex/advisory period. We currently have an advisory program, and we're now working to make sure that we take the best of the advisory program and maintain it. But if you look, the amount of time is longer than the current advisory program, and that's because we are looking for more opportunities for reteaching, relearning, reassessment, and enrichment so that students don't currently have time in the day for, and also that teachers don't necessarily have time in the day for when it comes to collaboration, which was that earlier slide. This is just an example of what a student's schedule may look like. We also tried to make it so that if you see flex advisory, yes, you'll be doing things that are obviously going to be mentally demanding at times, emotionally demanding. It is still a form of a break in the day, so we tried to pace that out well for the students. And then, as I said, one of the key things that we wanted to make sure was built into this is that even if you're not going to see the student that day in your class period, because you would see your students 2 out of 3 days in this schedule, there would be an opportunity built in every single day that you can see the student if you need to. And that may not be your entire class, although with what Mark is about to explain, you could actually bring your class in for, say, a 20-minute follow-up lesson, depending on how things have gone.
The only other thing I would add is on Bobcat Day, because student choice is so important, we didn't want to limit the amount of periods in the schedule. So Bobcat Day does not include E-period. It's a 6-period day. And the way we compromised and made up for that was E-period would be 65 minutes for both of Blue and White. So 65 plus 65 is 130 minutes. Bobcat Day, 50 minutes plus 80 minutes is 130 minutes. So that was the way we got around not reducing choice, but still not having any day that where you would take all 7 periods in one day. I don't know if you want to, maybe we'll just get through this and then wait for question, okay. Flex advisory, that period of the day really is a keystone for this. And it's really important that we communicate to you and to staff that the scheduling committee was not about to determine exactly how that time would be used. So there will be a committee set up to determine exactly how that flex period, advisory period will be used. What are the student protocols for that use of that time? What are their teacher protocols for use of that time? It could be It will be an extension, a continuation of advisory and office hours, time for relearning and reassessment, time for enrichment, and also there's time there that possibly for teacher collaboration, as well as social and emotional learning. The key to this is a piece of software that we've researched quite extensively. A number of schools in New England use this. It's called Enriching Students. It allows teachers to schedule students during that flex advisory block. So if I have a student who I know needs help in my class, I'm able to schedule them to come and see me at a certain day at a certain time. The software limits how many students I can have in that flex advisory period, so I'm not overwhelmed. It also it allows for student choice in that we control the extent to which teachers control the schedule versus allowing student input to self-control their schedule. So we envision something like, in the earlier years, teachers would be more in control of setting the schedule. Upperclassmen could be more in control of setting their own schedule. But it would be time set aside every day for purposes such as this. The software also allows every teacher to communicate to the sending teacher to communicate to the receiving teacher about why the student needs to be there, and the receiving teacher to take attendance and say present active, present inactive, so that the advisory teacher who is sending these students knows where the kids are going and why they're going and what they did while they were gone. And you also will be able to create reports, parent reports, student reports, say if a student's been struggling, have they gone and taken full advantage of this flex advisory time? Another thing that that schools have used is, say there was an AP test coming up and a teacher really needed some more time with their class. They have the ability to schedule their whole class for a test prep period. Or, some schools have used it as an enrichment for a teacher who has a certain skill or talent that they want to share with others. They can create an enrichment opportunity. So it's not just relearning and reassessment, it's also enrichment. And that goes back to our 21st century skills, trying to instill in students, self-reflection, self-scheduling, self-empowerment. All of those aspects we are hoping are incorporated into this flex advisory.
And the last piece of the puzzle is that there are many of the staff members who are comfortable right now with doing two blocks every 10 days. And so this is a significant change for many of us. And we're going to go to basically two blocks every 3 days. And it would be really helpful for us to have training offered this summer or at some point before school begins next year to help us get used to teaching more blocks than we are currently teaching. So hopefully the board can approve both the spending for the flex software that will allow us to use the advisory time a little bit different than we're using it right now, and also help us get the training we need this summer. So we'll take any questions you have. Yes.
I just want to commend all of you for all the time, and I looked at this, and at first I went, what? And then I looked at it, I was like, this really looks good. One question I have is, do you envision any particular classes that because that E-block is sort of different. Was there thought in terms of specific types of classes that, or it's just going to be random in terms of maybe someone will have a math in that block, somebody else might have, whatever. I mean, I'm just curious about that. Did you envision any particular courses that would fit into that, different, it's a little bit different schedule?
I don't think so, because we have an E-block right now. So basically on block days, there's a possibility that you could have a class that's blocked and takes the block period, and then you could also have that same class E period, which means it meets 2 days instead of just 1 day. So people are very used to dealing with that, and I don't think there'll be any issues with anybody having that block or teaching in that block.
Yeah, in some ways this was a solution to what can be a struggle sometimes with the current scheduling for E, because you never actually have that period as a block with the current schedule. And we did ask Jim Tebow, the science teacher, because our main concern would have been if a science class could run a lab. And he said that, especially knowing in advance that that's what you're planning for, it is still a manageable amount of time to do it, even though it is a little bit short.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question. Yeah. So, are you envisioning this would be in the fall? This is the new high school schedule?
Yes.
Okay, so the next question, when do you think the flex advisory, will that be dovetailed? Would that be done by the fall, do you think?
We would love to, and we are trying to get the software in our hands this year, so that we would be able to be trained and test run and schedule some students this year to get a feel for it, so that we, yes, would be able to start the fall up and running, ready to go. So fingers crossed with that, but we're working with enriching students.
Yeah, because I mean, when I look at that, and I've gone to a couple classes where they talked about the advisory period, I think, of course, you were there, and it's like, when I see the software, this idea where you can kind of target it, and I was just even thinking of mathematics, that you could schedule a time during that flex period where a student was in need, they met with the teacher, maybe use the flex time then to go to math lab, and then, say, later come back and check with the teacher. So I think it just, it makes it a much more active experience, whereas one of the complaints by students, it was kind of like the flex, or the advisory period, it was kind of hit or miss, and this one can be a much more targeted experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's exactly our hope. And we would still have the advisory group. So the core and of students and teachers would still continue to meet. And that advisory teacher is the teacher who would work with the students to varying degrees to schedule out that week or 3-day period. And they would always come back to that like a home base, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Mark, can I ask a question of all three of you? Related to your statement about it'll be more structured for freshmen, sophomores, less for juniors and seniors. And my question is really about juniors and seniors who are struggling. Are they going to still have the freedom to choose, or is it going to be chosen by the teachers for them to be at the place they need the extra help in?
It's a great question, and that would be part of the protocol that the Flex Committee would design. Other schools that we visited and talked to established an academic threshold, so that below this, if you were achieving below, not achieving above this threshold, you would not have choice. You would lose that choice. If you are above it, then you would have that choice. So those are things, yes, I would assume that would be in place, and that would have to be discussed. We didn't want to make those decisions. We wanted to create the structure within which those decisions could be made collaboratively.
And I would only add that my experience with leaving it up to older students to make a decision about their struggling nature in a particular course is an Achilles heel in this proposal. If the teachers will need to take a proactive stand. If somebody's struggling in Spanish, Tom is going to have to say, you need to be here.
Yep.
Or somebody's struggling in writing, Sean is going to have to say, you need to be here, and communicate that amongst each other.
I completely agree. In one school we saw clearly laid out that was a teacher protocol, a teacher expectation. Student below this point, they need to come and see you. The flip side of that is it can be incentive, because if this evolves as it has in other schools, an enrichment activity could be very appealing, and I can't do it because I haven't achieved, at the certain level.
Have you surveyed the staff to get a sense of what enrichment activities they're interested in offering students?
Not yet.
So that would be a key piece for that committee to do as well, because, Sean has skills, Tom has skills that don't relate necessarily to the content, but they have interests through hobbies that kids might be interested in. And so surveying the staff to get a sense of enrichment would be an important part of making that flex period work.
Another thing that we've thought of is, social emotional learning, mindfulness, that sort of thing. Not all teachers are comfortable with doing that in advisory.
Right.
But if there were a group of teachers who offered that and students had a choice about that, that would alleviate that awkwardness for some, but still give students those opportunities.
So there's obvious in this proposal, I think it was Sean who talked about lowering stress and overall course load and potentially addressing the homework issue. And that also is another committee that you have working. So, you heard earlier the board wants to have a workshop specifically on the homework piece of it. And the reason that I wanted the master schedule piece to come out first is so they could see the interrelationship between what you guys are proposing as the master schedule for the high school and how to address issues of stress. We've had numerous conversations over the last 2 years on. So, like Denise, I really just want to say great job in coming up with a solution that meets as many needs as you possibly can with the diverse content that's being taught at the high school.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought of one other question. What about students, though, that go to the vocational programs at the other schools? I just realized how that will work with the rotating schedule.
That's an issue that we will have to address as the year unfolds next year.
If you look at the times.
Suzanne, you're going to go to the microphone.
So if you look at the times A and B, and then if you look at the blue and the white days, A and B, they overlap in time. So it'll be very similar now for kids, where you lose certain periods of your day to participate in different programs.
Right.
So, I think that will evolve, but if the time overlap is very similar to what we already have for kids. And those periods that they would be leaving during the school day, they would be assigned to the classes, whether they're in Somersworth, Dover, or Rochester.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good.
Maybe I missed it and I apologize, but with the 3 different types of days, what would be the frequency?
They just rotate through.
It would be a waterfall.
So they're going to be equal. One's the first day is a Bobcat day,
Right,
so days of the week don't become locked in as well.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And the other question, and I don't even know if it is feasible, was there any discussion about how certain classes, I think, really lend themselves to longer periods? Well, some of them are a little bit harder when you go longer. That ability to, just for me to stay focused on calculus for that long block is very different than if I'm in a discussion class in English or social studies. Was that anything that you all talked about? And I'm interested how you
We
came to the
spoke
resolution.
extensively about that. I'm with you. I could take about 10 minutes of calculus and then I'm done. But we talked about that at length, and, in the 2 schedules that were proposed, the other schedule had classes meeting more frequently and had less blocks. And it would mean that some departments, and that's why I said, like I gave the world language department as an example, would have to choose to either be a department that meets every day, all the time, or a department that's blocked. And that would be the only way that schedule would have worked. And that was the other option had that included in it, and that was the option that the faculty did not choose.
So that was the kind of the trade-off.
Right,
that
exactly.
You kind of referenced with your analogy.
Yes.
And felt this was.
Yes,
good.
Exactly.
Thank you.
That was the biggest not tension socially, but that was probably trying to figure out the perfect schedule to address that. That was the hardest part, because it wasn't, as big of an undertaking as it is to address stress and these other issues, they weren't nearly as hard as how different content areas sometimes lend themselves to different structures of time. And the flex would hopefully address some of that, because some content would like more frequency with students. And then the blocks are actually a little bit shorter, which I guess 10 minutes fewer of calculus.
It also is part of why,
Sorry.
why we need professional development, because to do 80 minutes of the same thing is not going to work for all. So there are a lot of schools that teach with longer periods and have come up with a lot of great ways to do that and keep students engaged. So that's part of what we would do with professional development.
Yeah, and that is one of the, one of the things there were 3 of us that went to Gorham High School to see how the flex block actually works. And we went on the day the kids were signing up for what they were going to do for the week. And there's the ability, and this is why we like this so much, there's the ability for teachers to say, I want to see either this whole class come into flex block, or I want to see these certain individuals come into flex block. And you can, as a teacher, you can map it out and say, well, Thursday, I would need to see everybody in my Algebra 2 class or whatever class it is, and they'll all come in, and they can't do anything else that day.
So Tom, what would happen if you and Sean wanted that to happen concurrently? Would you-
Well, since I would do it before Sean, I would win. So I
Sean
think
would
it's a...
defer to your age, is what you're saying?
No, my planning. Yes. So, I think that could be sorted out, but my guess would be whoever blocks off the period first is the person that gets it.
And then you're communicating back and forth, so that if you ended up needing them for a period and Sean needed them for a period, I assume, since he would know that, he would be able to communicate with you, can I do it next period?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, if Tom booked the student before I did, I'd go in and I would see that, and I would say, is it, like, what do you need to work with the student on, and, is it okay if we swap, and we could discuss that. It would all be visible to the teacher.
So 100% of the staff is seeing what's going on with each child, so that if you put in a name and Sean puts in a name, you'll see that there's a conflict.
Yes, exactly.
That's cool.
So if I say Jim, if I call Jim into my class...
Which you would have to do frequently.
Exactly, and then I'd have to say, well, he's going to be with Sean, so he'll have to come in some other day.
But I was just going to say, the other thing that's really beneficial about that is someone who's struggling across the board, you're going to pick that up. You're going to see that quickly.
Yes.
And you're facilitating the communication between, like, is it just English that's happening? You can say, no, it's happening in Spanish too.
Right.
And you can have, more of an intervention occur after that.
Right.
Yeah, it starts that conversation between Tom and me, if it doesn't already happen.
Let's catch it quicker.
That's so important. It's such a great thing, right?
And the other side of that would be, the English department could say, on this day, we're not having any students. We're going to get together and we're going to have teacher collaboration time. So
That'd be cool.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
So my understanding is that a student could still take 7 classes, right? Because you still have 7 periods, but they wouldn't be taking 7 periods in a day.
Right.
And I think one of the advantages of this is it feels more like the rhythm of college than it does of the traditional high school, where you're not having every class every day. So you have kind of like a breathing space between classes, which I think, is a more comfortable, more appealing way of learning than just to have back-to-back classes. So I think that's a real advantage of it. So, I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, it's one person, I think it's H.L. Mencken, said that changing a curriculum is like moving a graveyard. It's really hard because there's sanctified spaces that you're not going to, so I just realized how hard it is and how loyal people are to certain structures, and so I really admire what you've done. So, Denise?
I just have a question then about the software in terms of cost and how that would fit into the budget and all of that sort of thing.
That is in the budget.
Oh,
I wrote
okay.
it into the budget, so, and that's been something that hasn't been changed at all.
Is it cloud-based, or we have to be hosted locally?
That is, IT is working on that with them. That is not my area of expertise. So
But
we're
it's
gonna have
important how much
Josh-
burden that puts on the IT group, too.
It doesn't. It's
cloud-based.
It's cloud-based, there you go.
So it's not something we have to house here.
And teachers can work on it at home, so if let's say they're at home and they're working, and they see, they're grading a paper and they notice something, they can get on there and they can invite a student to come and see them, so they can access it.
And have you guys identified trainers for the professional that Ton referred to?
So yes, we've already had some conversations in admin about professional development for faculty around teaching in blocks. We have Mike Anderson is coming to work with us a little bit on social emotional learning, and we've had conversations with him about blending some of that into what he's going to be doing with professional development. So he will be doing that, and that will be starting next month. And then we've also been talking amongst other faculty about different things that they've seen being at different schools that have taught underneath block schedules, and they're and trying to tap into some of our resources that we already have within the school.
I may have a few names for you as well.
That would be great.
How much more advisory time is there in this schedule than there is today?
Oh, my goodness, must be.
Well, it's a hard comparison to make because,
Yeah.
as Mark said, what that flex/advisory time looks like, we weren't trying to take it upon ourselves to figure out exactly. And there are a number of positives with the current advisory system, and there are some negatives. And so there's no straight answer because it's definitely not going to be 50 minutes of advisory every day. But we haven't said, well, we'll carve out this much time each day, or every white day is advisory for half of it. We don't know yet. I'm not trying to dodge the question, there's just no.
I'm going to ask it again then a different way.
Okay.
How much flex plus advisory time is there in the schedule today? And how much more is there here? And where I was going is, where does it come from?
Shorter block day. The periods, the block periods are 10 minutes shorter,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
the advisory is coming from the block.
Okay.
There's also less passing time.
Yeah.
There's
Walk faster.
Yeah. No, sorry.
There's fewer classes.
There's fewer classes, so you
Right.
don't lose
Okay,
those
gotcha.
4 minutes between each class because you're not transferring from class to class as frequently throughout the day. But you could,
That makes more sense.
we could have you at the front door just be like, walk fast.
Walk past it.
But right now, we have specific days that are either advisory or office hours.
So currently, it's roughly 20 minutes
Yeah.
per day in advisory on Monday, Tuesday,
40-ish
Wednesday,
minutes.
and then office hours, roughly 20 minutes, but on block days, it's longer.
It's longer.
Yeah, on block days, office hours.
We're gaining time. I
about 40
don't know
minutes.
the exact number of minutes. I'd have to calculate that, but we are gaining more flexible time.
And it's coming out of the classes on the block.
It's coming out of
On the
passing
Bobcat day.
time and a little bit out of class time. But I do want to say that the flex and advisory time, that is instructional time for kids. It's just that it depends on what that instruction is going to look like for that student. So there are a lot of students that will access that time for relearning and reassessment, which right now a 20-minute block of time is not enough time to do relearning and reassessment. So while we're talking about a variety of different uses, I think that is also instructional time for kids. We've also been looking at our multi-tiered systems of supports, and one of the things we've noticed is we'd really like to have more group opportunities for kids for supports, and that could be in the counseling office, has been talking exhaustively about how they can use possible flexible time to do different types of social emotional learning groups with students. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there for that.
I have a question, just a procedural question. What is the next step for us as a board?
Well, the schedule doesn't require approval by the board, so it's information for the board.
Okay.
And what we were trying to do tonight is give you the direction of the staff, make sure conceptually you're on board, and it seems like from the questions you're asking, that feels good. And then this is the foundation for the work around the homework issue. So that's why I wanted to get this out first before we talked about homework. You can see how they're interconnected.
Right.
And it's also the foundation for lessening the stress on our students, which is the other reason I wanted to get this done tonight. So from here, the staff will go forward. We've got the money budgeted for the software, and we'll line up the professional development that Tom alluded to, and that would be this spring, this summer. And then concurrently, Suzanne and Mark have the committees on homework, and you have another committee that's working besides homework right now.
Wellness Committee is working on that.
There's the Flex Advisory Committee.
Flex Advisory.
It just started today.
Oh, I see.
So all the pieces, we just wanted to give you the pieces so you could see, if we tried to address homework in isolation of this, it would make no sense. So you needed to have this as the foundation for homework, for the Flex Advisory, and for the stress issues related to lowering the stress on our students. And so the next step is our workshop on homework, and that committee's meeting, and hopefully they'll come through with some concrete recommendations, much like you guys did, and how we can follow through on this work in relation to, as Tom was alluding to, even if somebody took 7 periods, automatically they wouldn't have 7 periods worth of homework, and then what protocols the staff would be developing over the course of this 3-day rotating schedule related to homework.
So, and I think all those additional pieces are great, and I really like the way that you queued it all up. But it seems even regardless of where we go with the others, could we have, and it sounds like to get this approval, because their piece is very unique to this, could we have this as an action item on our next agenda and have that off the table? Because I think whatever we do about homework, I think we'll...
There's no formal action that's required by the board on the master schedule.
Okay.
So this is good. The reading of the tea leaves that I'm hearing tonight is the board is appreciative of the direction the staff has gone. They've done the hard work. We wanted to make sure you were aware of the direction we were going before we stepped in it. We've done that. And so the next step is the homework workshop. And then later in the spring, I'm sure Suzanne will have the Flex Advisory Committee come forward and start talking about putting the meat on that particular plate. And then we'll be ready to implement in the fall.
And I just, maybe, I'm sure there's some step where, because this is such a new thing for parents.
Yes.
Because we're all used to that old model, right? We went through it ourselves. So I assume that there'll be, in the spring, orientation of parents of what this is going to look like.
Yes, so we wanted to speak with you first, and then we'll be rolling it out to students and to parents next. And we'll have opportunities for parents to come in and ask questions, and we'll also put it out through communication.
And when the students sign up for courses, Suzanne, that's going to be March, right?
Well, it's in the spring, yes.
Yeah,
The
so-
master scheduling for us will start this month. It actually starts next week. We'll restart, so the timing of this is perfect for us.
Okay. So the reason I was asking that, just to piggyback Tom, is as students are making course selections, it's going to be obvious that things have changed.
Yes.
At some point in that selection process, you're going to have orienting meetings, not just with parents, but with the students themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you did a great job, by the way, in engaging students, the survey. Thank you so much for doing that. That was real information, and it obviously guided your decisions.
Fortunately, this also won't be that hard to conceptualize when it comes to course selection, too, because it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, which is what we've been doing all along.
Right.
It's just the way that we have
Just
placed
when
it
the
out.
classes are, yep.
Great.
Nice
Thank you.
job.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Andy?
Good evening. I was able to reach out to both Dover High School and Portsmouth and kind of work through a rough draft. I think did everybody get that? Rough draft of the agreements. If you look at it, it's a template that the NHIA puts out that we kind of go by. Portsmouth was relatively easy because there was one already in place with them. There was some language in there that was a little concerning that they did remove about if they were able to reclassify into Division II, that they would dissolve the cooperative with Oyster River, and they agreed to remove that language out of that. So Other than that, they're very similar. You know, each agreement has to, I mean, there's certain core things that have to be in there. The funding of the sport, both school systems have agreed to do things on a per, you know, with Oyster River on a per student cost, which is a little bit of what I shared with you in the PowerPoint, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Coaches eligibility, with Dover and Portsmouth being lead schools in the cooperative, potentially their athletic director principal would be the main contact person as far as hiring coaches and staff. If they have a staff in place, if there was to be a new opening, then they would include me in that process as well. So, and both schools have agreed to do that. Transportation, all transportation would be provided by the host school, which would be Portsmouth or Dover. Transportation to practices would be parent responsibility, so there would be no cost as far as transportation to the district. Use of facilities would all take place at the host school. You know, practices would be at Portsmouth or Dover, all games would be there or wherever they were playing on that particular day. And a procedure for, you know, dissolving the program. We've agreed that, you know, the two athletic directors would get together at the end of the year and kind of evaluate the program, and certainly committed to the 2-year cycle, but after that 2-year cycle, reevaluate and look at any changes that might be made. The one difference, and I don't think this is a real sticking point, as far as evaluation of coaches, the Dover athletic director asked that I be more involved with that than Portsmouth. That's not a huge deal to me. That's not a big breaking point for me at all. So the bulk, the meat of these two agreements are pretty similar. I think where you'll find some differences is in the general information, which is actually on the pages after the signatures. Actually, I did want to mention a little bit about liability, and Dr. Morris, I think, was going to talk about that a little bit.
Tom raised the issue to me in an email yesterday when he saw the agreements that they didn't address liability, and so I reached out to both the superintendents to see if they were willing to put a rider on their policy related to the cooperative team and our students. And the Portsmouth superintendent did respond very quickly and said he absolutely would be willing to do that. The Dover superintendent needed time to think through it, so I don't have a direct answer yet. I would assume I'd have one by the end of the week.
So the Portsmouth, the agreement was that they would cover our students.
Correct. And then you have the letter from Diane Goro from about a month ago where she said that the exposure to the district was pretty low. So if Portsmouth picks up a rider, it would even be that much less exposure to the district.
Okay.
So if you look at that, the general information page, I mean, the big difference, and it's not really a huge thing, is the cost. Portsmouth is, Dover is a fixed rate at about $460. Portsmouth will vary depending on the number of students or number of athletes that are participating. He estimated it would be between $500 to $600 a year. Not a huge difference in price, but, you know, the fixed cost does give someone for planning purposes, it could be helpful to parents. Other than that, as far as classification goes, I think we would fall in Division I regardless of either school that we chose to go with, just by sheer numbers. I did kind of, go over some pros and cons of each. I think I could say with full confidence that either school would be a great fit, in my opinion. Their coaching staffs are great, both schools. The leadership is great. Both their athletic directors are highly respected. They've been there a long time. I would have absolutely no issue with our kids participating in either one of those programs. That said, there are, I think, unique things about each one of them that you might want to consider. First, for Dover, I think, obviously the proximity is convenient for parents. It's 2.9 miles down the road. And, as far as, picking up after an away game or dropping off at practice, I think that certainly is a pro. Dover participates in the HUT program. It's one of 4 schools in New Hampshire that does that. The HUT program is a helmetless tackling training program, which is, it's run out of UNH. The head of their kinesiology department is the one that's kind of driven that whole thing, and it's gained some national attention. And I did include some links there that if you guys wanted to check those out, that you could. But I think it's a step in the right direction for football players and teaching proper technique of tackling to try to eliminate some injury. Dover is willing to change their practice times to accommodate our schedule. And I did say that the fixed rate cost was a pro. Portsmouth, we have an established program already with them in girls hockey, so we know that, working with them works. So I think that is, that's a big deal. There seems to be a familiarity with the parents, our parents, with the coaching staff at Portsmouth. I think there's a comfort level there. I think that they know the coaching staff there probably a little bit better than Dover. So I think that's a plus for them. And their academic day is similar to ours. So I think, practice wouldn't be an issue getting over there. It's about, when I went over to speak with their principal and athletic director, I timed it, it was about 19 minutes door to door, where there really wasn't any traffic that day. So.
There never is.
Yeah, well, no, it's getting across the bridge is no problem. Yeah, so, I think that both programs are very well respected, and, I really wouldn't see going wrong either way.
Yeah?
Question?
Yeah.
The HUT program, is that something that's going on in perpetuity? Is there a finite period of time that's?
That I don't know, but I know that they've been doing it for a couple of years, so I think it's something that is
an ongoing.
It's an ongoing thing.
It's not a trial thing or
no,
pilot program.
no. And like I said, I think it's starting to gain some, some national attention.
Just one other quick one. You mentioned the different roles for you that the 2 programs envision. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? You mentioned evaluating coaches.
Yep. My role is secondary to the host school's athletic director. I basically would support, I would help administrate games. But all the communication, the scheduling, all of that stuff comes from the host school. And then at the end, as far as any coach hires, like I said, since they already have a staff in place, that's their staff, the Portsmouth staff or the Dover staff. If there was to be an opening on that staff, I would be involved. Coming up.
I'm sorry, the difference between I may have missed it. You had mentioned.
There's the difference in the language in here, and like I said, I don't think it would be an issue because I'm sure Portsmouth, if I asked them, would change that. That if there was in the evaluation process, it's written in here that I would be involved with the Dover evaluation process. It's not written as Portsmouth.
Is that something you would want?
Either way, it doesn't matter to me, really. Like I said, those 2 athletic directors have been at it for a long time, so I trust their judgment.
Can I ask a question? Because we have a reciprocal agreement with Portsmouth already. How does the evaluation of coaches work with Portsmouth and us with girls hockey?
They have very little involvement.
You do the evaluations of girls hockey?
Yeah.
And wouldn't that be typical of a cooperative team? Because the idea is.
I think Dover was, extending that offer to me, which I do appreciate. I mean, I would, I would give my 2 cents if I was asked, but, I'm not gonna, that's not something that I absolutely have to have
We'll
control.
gladly offer you more work to do.
Yeah. That's not something in here that I think needs to be focused on, I guess, if that answers your question.
I had a question. Do either of these schools have JV teams, or is that
They
something?
do, I think Dover, their numbers were really down this year. I think this is the first year they didn't have a freshman team.
Okay.
But Portsmouth had freshman, JV, and varsity.
So if a kid is not able to make the varsity team, they would still have the
Yeah,
opportunity.
when you go into a cooperative, there's a no cut. You have to agree that you're going to have a team for a kid to play on somewhere.
And have games.
And have games.
Okay.
Yep. So, if we sent, 16 freshmen over there, and they weren't able to make, they'd be on the freshman team.
Okay.
So it's, their tryout process would be the same as if they were Dover or Portsmouth students. But the NHIA requires that there's a no-cut
So
policy
that's,
for
football is a no-cut sport.
no cut. Well, any cooperative is a no-cut.
Any cooperative is a no-cut.
Yep. That's one of the stipulations in the cooperative agreements.
So the questions?
How, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but is it difficult to set up a boosters program if the parents,
Well, if you have motivated parents, it's not. I think our team, there's been a couple of sports just in the 2 seasons that I've been here that didn't have booster clubs that have jumped up and have started them this year. And really, you have to have the parents that are, willing to do that. And I would say football is a sport where you don't have that issue, a lot like hockey. The parents are very invested. So there's a lot of people that are willing to jump on board. I would envision our parents supporting the already existing booster clubs of Dover or Portsmouth, because I think that they use those clubs to to defray the cost of all the kids. So with our kids being part of that, I think that's how I would envision that. I guess they could have their own Oyster River booster, but the Portsmouth Oyster River Cooperative Hockey Program has one booster club. So I guess I would envision it going that same way.
Other questions?
Yeah, just a very minor thing in the Dover, I don't know, this is just a draft, but there was Portsmouth.
Yeah, there's a typo in there. I just noticed that,
I just
too.
yeah, that's all. It was minor.
So basically, we took the template here.
Yeah,
and
which is fine, yeah.
tried to change the names, but obviously missed one there.
Yeah.
So to think forward to the January 10th, my sense of the way the meeting will begin would be essentially to present the information about the co-op that we've gotten, so that people have the same information, going back to the questions that Dan formulated, and then the additional information that you've gathered since then, and then I would say we open it up for questions and comments, and as we've done before. So I really appreciate the work you've done, just gathering this. I think it's clarified things, it's, been informative, and...
Well, I hope I didn't confuse you more.
No, I think you've been very,
very good.
clear, and I think you really addressed the questions that we asked, and so, Denise?
I think it would probably be good to make these copies of these, draft agreements available to the public to view.
I can make those right in the communication with the parents tomorrow as attachments. So we can
Just
get
have to
that out
change that
tomorrow,
one
assuming we
piece
have
that you
internet and
pointed
power.
Yeah.
You guys have generators.
Oh, yeah, not tomorrow, but whenever. yeah.
One quick question. Will, for our forum next week, will both coaching staffs be there?
I can ask them to be.
So I'm sure there'll be some questions from parents.
I'm sure they would be willing, if they're available, I'm sure they would be willing to come.
At least the head coaches, we could, not necessarily the
Yeah,
staff, but-
yeah.
I thought it was helpful that they just happened to...
Well, they were good information. We just had limited time with them, and now we have a little bit longer time to talk about
Sure.
this football. It'd be great to have them maybe answer any questions that you or us couldn't answer,
Yep.
general public.
I certainly will reach out and extend the invitation.
Okay. You all set? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so Sue, we have like the default budget.
You just have all of the documents we've pretty much approved, ready for a public hearing next week. And I just wanted to give you one last chance to review them. Questions?
I got one.
Sure.
All right, so I'm missing, so when you do like the top one that shows all the school breakdowns.
Which form
Which
are you
looking at?
talking about?
This is the FY19 budget, that one with.
Yep.
So it has all the schools on it, Mastway, Mohair.
Yep.
All that. And so it shows like the difference between the fiscal 2017-18, 2018-19 is $1,255,660, or 2.92%. And when you go down to the blue one below it, and it shows the Fund 10, and it shows the 2018 voted and the 2019 proposed. The difference is $1,782,736. So the top one, the percent difference is 2.92%, and in that one, it's 4.2%.
Because
Under $500,000.
you also have federal funds and food service in there. On that blue one, those are all funds.
Okay, and then that's just including the top one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's not, this is just general fund budget. This one here is just your operating budget, general fund. This one incorporates all funds. Because remember, on your warrant, you have to have them all in there.
So you don't need a vote on this? 'cause
Nope, nope, I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure everyone was all set with all the documents.
Are we all
We're
set?
working on the PowerPoint. Should be good to go.
So, Susan, just a reminder, the budget we voted on is lower than the default budget? Is that correct?
No.
No.
70,000 above, I think.
70,000.
Yes.
So next week, there's an official meeting of the budget process. So I'll present the budget next week and open it up to questions. And then in February, you all present the budget, and we open it up to questions.
Okay.
And then just a question that about the warrant is, the order is required now, that the budget is at the beginning as opposed to the end, or?
Well, every time when I submit it, they have commented on the fact that my operating budget is not the first article.
Oh.
But I have talked to other districts, and they say, oh, we just ignore that, and we put all our collective bargaining agreements first. So, depends on who you're...
Which has been our history.
Been our
Because
history.
it builds up to the total budget.
Right.
And to put the total budget first and then do the subsections afterwards doesn't make any logical sense.
Right.
So it's not a requirement. They keep on wanting it. They keep on suggesting it
Right.
strongly. So until they say it's a requirement, it's just a strong suggestion. So
But we have gone down that road and changed our warrant to reflect that.
Who are they that are?
Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue.
And I can tell you
In this
that,
case, there really is a they.
yes, and they have auditors that they assign to us, and I think I've had mine changed 6 times in the last 3 years, so it's always somebody different.
So what is your recommendation, Sue? To change the order because you feel you keep on getting badgered by them, or do you want to keep the traditional order?
I guess I'd look for your recommendation, because I like the order the way it used to be. I really like that order.
It makes logical sense.
But the numbers would be different than when they are.
No, it's just, we just switch them up.
Can I just ask, is there an actual requirement in law, or is this their practice?
Well, the auditor I had last year led me to believe that it was required. I haven't heard that this year, but I haven't officially submitted the warrant. And that's the problem, is the portal to submit warrants doesn't get opened up until well into the process, which we ran into last year. It's like, but I've already presented this to my board, I presented it to the public, and now you're asking me to change the order midstream. So that's why up ahead of the game, I changed the order, and now I have a different auditor, and it may not be as critical.
So my
It's a bit
question,
frustrating.
Article 3 is the budget minus the negotiated agreements?
Correct.
It is.
Okay.
And no matter where you put it, it's going to be the same. It's just, I changed it based on recommendation last year. That can be Article 5, as it always has been, if you prefer that.
I
Beat a
think,
dead horse,
I think
but-
if it's explained, I think it could go either way.
It can go either way. It's just that it is a different format. I just get concerned when people go to the polls and they see something different. It does cause people to wonder, why did you change this all of a sudden? You know, if you're not informed and you're not participating in the process a lot, it may cause people to say, well, that's different.
So what we're asking people to approve is Article 3 plus the amounts in Article 4 and Article 5?
Which is the same we've always done, except that Article 4 and Article 5 will be for Article 3. So
So we never changed, did we ever change the amount in Article 5? No, okay.
We haven't changed anything other than the
Okay,
order.
just the order.
Just the
Okay.
order.
I think that can be explained either way.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the requirement thing. Is that something that the School Board Association could help us with? I mean, I don't want to send you down a
Yeah, I mean, I can reach out to them. I mean,
I would imagine that this is something that's come up for a lot of districts.
Constantly.
yeah.
So I would hope that the School Board Association could at least get a quick answer as to whether this is an actual requirement or if this is just something that,
A recommendation.
or it's a recommendation, which we can deal with, but to not have a solid answer on that seems confusing.
As it does to us, Dan.
So I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
So do we need to, is this for information?
This is just information because you're presenting at your public hearing. Remember, you don't finalize anything until after you've heard and opened it up to the public.
So I'm
you just
wondering
can't
if you,
change
if you could
numbers.
get clarification on that. If it's not required, I think probably the previous order's best. If it is required, it's required. We got to do
Okay.
it. So just,
Okay. And so we'll just present it that way
yeah.
next week, and you'll know that because we got the approval to do that, it's changed.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
fair. I can do that.
So we just change the numbers then, if we need to.
Yeah, Article 3 becomes Article 5.
Yeah, just different
Okay.
Yeah.
number.
So, in the default budget, we've approved that, right?
Yep.
You'll sign that after the hearing.
Okay. So we don't need to
You don't need to approve
do the
anything.
warrant articles. Okay, the assignment of the warrant articles, I'd like to propose that Denise present the ORPAS. I'm not sure what number it'll be, so. The ORPAS agreement, that Dan present the ORBDA agreement, the bus drivers, that Al present the budget, and that Brian presents the volunteers award. Okay, so those are the four major things we have. So I'd like to move that as a block. Could I have a second?
When you say volunteers, you meant the distinguished?
The distinguished, you know,
Which are you taking recommendations for
Nope,
that?
We're done. We
done.
did it.
It's done.
We opened it to you guys before Christmas in the conversation.
I don't remember ever hearing
Yeah.
that.
They said I was doing it, and then I took it
missed
to
it.
the 18th.
Okay, well,
You can, no, there's another year, Denise. You got somebody right at the tip of your tongue. Remember you guys gave that to administration? You didn't want to do it at the board level?
yeah, I
We
just,
couldn't do it,
yeah,
yeah.
that's fine.
I'm sorry, did I get a second on that? Brian? Okay.
Can you say that again? You went really fast.
I'm sorry.
Michael was going to do ORPAS, OBDA.
No, I'm doing
the full
ORPAS.
budget.
Denise does ORPAS, Dan does ORBDA, the bus drivers, Al does the budget, and then Brian does the award.
Distinguished Service Award.
Okay. So, we vote? Okay, all in favor? 7 in favor, student rep in favor, so those assignments are made.
So I know Brian seconded it. Who was the person who
I
proposed
moved it.
You did? Thanks.
Nothing.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the maternity leave absence, Oyster River High School. Could I have that motion? Brian?
Make a motion to accept the request for maternity leave.
Moved by Brian, is there a second? Second by Denise. Discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. Motion to approve the Mohammed paraprofessional unpaid leave of absence for the rest of the year. Could I have a motion? Brian?
Motion to accept the request for leave of absence from Rebecca Casimiro.
Moved by Brian, is there a second? Second by Dan. Discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor. We have a motion to approve list of policies for second read, ADC and JICH&R. Denise?
Well, I just have a question because Policy Committee actually hasn't met since we did the first read, and I know that I had suggested the change in, oh gosh, I'm going to find it now, taking out a couple words. I just didn't know if that was anything that we needed to go back to policy to discuss.
Which?
All right, hold on, let me find it. I've got to get in my policies. Hold on one second. It was use of tobacco products strictly prohibited, ADC, striking out the and possession. And the reason for that was around adults who may have possession of tobacco when they're attending an event on campus, whatever. But I just didn't know if we needed to kind of talk about that more in terms of the implications for students and needed to make some other accommodations. So that was my question, is whether we should wait and have bring it back after our policy, next
Sure.
policy
So I would say if
committee.
you have questions, we should wait
Okay.
and get it. This policy meets
Next week, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to wait on both policies? Is that?
No, I think it's just that one, I think.
Okay.
The other one's probably fine.
That's
Yeah, and alcohol.
drug and alcohol use by students. So would you want to move that one?
Alcohol use and possession by students, yeah, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion, let's see, it's policy JICH for second read and adoption.
Okay, moved by Denise, is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the student rep in favor, that policy is approved. School board committee updates?
And before you do that, Denise, do we need Suzanne at that meeting to clarify your concern related to ADC?
It was more whether, because we kind of went through the language, and I just didn't know if there were concerns and implications. So if she has any, it would be good to.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Committee updates? I just to mention that the facilities committee, we're not going to meet tomorrow, that's on our next scheduled meeting, but we're well on the way to evaluating a whole set of possibilities. We got an unbelievable matrix of factors that we're using to come up with numerical ratings. I'm on the subcommittee also looking at land, and we've looked at possible parcels of land that might be used, and so I think things are moving with the facilities committee. They're looking at about the middle school. So other committee reports people have? No? Okay. Public comment?
Go. He's not paying attention.
Public comment? No?
Dean, public comment?
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. So we have a public hearing, and that's a little confusing. On the 9th, the public hearing is about the budget.
Now I see it.
And the 10th, it's about, football. And the rest of the meetings are, as scheduled. My understanding is we need to get into a non-public to work on the superintendent's evaluation. So I wonder if I could have a motion to go into non-public for the purpose of superintendent's evaluation. Can somebody make that motion? Let's see what. The number 3, or what?
You're really good at that.
This is on Kenny always.
Kenny, this is your thing.
Yeah, so I'll move that we go into non-public under New Hampshire State Law RSA 91-A:3, 2, subset C, matters which, if discussed in public, would affect reputation of people.
Moved by Kenny, second by Denise. Roll call vote.
Dan Klein, yes?
Michael Williams, yes.
Kenny Rotner, yes?
Denise Day, yes.
Tom Newkirk, yes?
Al Holland, yes.
Brian Cisneros, yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so,
Have fun
go to
now.
non-public.
You almost got your way.